broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome to the Moonbeam City After Show right here on AfterBuzz TV. It's a new studio, it's a new show.
I'm sorry, I just can't help
Kylie
but
Minogue?
dance.
No, this is wonderful. This is beautiful. The music in this show. I mean, I know this isn't. Is this? I don't know. I can't tell. Anything synthy can be from this show, and I can't tell. It's fantastic. I am one of your hosts for this show. I am the Internet Soapbox Mark. You can find me on Twitter at Soapbox Mark. And of course, he's Greg. He's got the goodness. He's Greg Goodness.
And you can find me on the twits at Greg Goodness. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to remember. Don't worry about it. We're doing something a little bit different. We're covering episodes 1 and 2.
This is a one-time thing. We wanted to wait until we got into the new studio, so we're going to make up for it by doing both of the episodes at the same time.
But man, oh man, are we going to have a lot to cover because Moonbeam City manages to cram a lot down in a very short period of time. We're covering both Mall Hath No Fury and Lights, Camera, Reenaction.
This show is so fast. It's so dense. So much stuff happens in such a short period of time. And it's great. I'm a big fan. The creator, Scott Gairdner, has been one of my favorite internet creators for several years. Really happy that he got this show. But the critics are a little bit wary of the show so far, but as with any show, that comes naturally.
Well, you know, I think what's interesting is that if you go back and look at South Park in the first season of South Park, that was not a universally well-reviewed show. I think that the Hollywood Reporter said that it was like baseless, crude humor that will never find an audience. And now here we are, 18 years.
That's right, 18 years.
Yeah, later. So I think that when it comes to comedy, critics have been off. And at least I'm a big fan from what I've seen so far. Some of the jokes in this are just so on point. Like, I've laughed out loud in ways that I haven't in a long time at TV.
It's just a generally funny show. There's a lot of visual gags. There's a lot of the stuff with the art style and the movement. This is classic Titmouse. Like, Titmouse, they're a great animation studio. They've done a lot for Adult Swim, but their style is it adds very well to these scripts.
Yeah, and you know, you can sort of see that style like in their earlier work, like Metalocalypse.
Oh, definitely Metalocalypse in here.
I mean, at least for the graphic violence. Like, okay, let's just go back to episode 1 here.
Mall Hath No Fury.
Mall Hath No Fury. One of the first things we see is El Diablo Malo, which, again, I love the newscap reenactor of a name as terrifying as it is unoriginal.
Yep.
But he's lighting an old woman on fire. Like, he just steals her purse and lights her on fire. So that sets the tone for exactly what kind of show this is.
And at the same time, right after meeting Dazzle, tearing off the giant disguise of meaty arms to have his suit, I ran out of bullets. I spent them all on that car, and we see a wonderfully drawn phallus on the side of the van.
I'm glad that you went with phallus.
Gotta keep it clean for the kids. There's only enough cocaine to go around. And even just do you have any bullets? Crap.
Run away. Yeah, that recurring crap throughout the first episode.
It works.
It does work. Mm-hmm. And that was some of the things I really enjoyed is all of the callbacks littered throughout all of these episodes. Both, I guess, both of them. Both of them, the same difference.
It works.
But when Rad was dipping, he's stirring his coffee, and then it reveals that it's a mouse after he's been talking about giving mice baths in the #1 cop mug. Like, that's just good writing. That's just solid jokes, which I can appreciate.
All of the characters in the show, or all of the main characters, even the side characters. I mean, greatest naming in any show. We've got Dazzle, played by Rob Lowe, played amazingly by Rob Lowe. Pizzazz, played by Elizabeth Banks, just like the epitome of a strong female cop, and like I keep wanting to say General Chief, a great police chief, and of course Rad, and Chrysalis, and we've got a whole bunch of more names in the second episode too. But this is just the epitome of what people think the 80s was.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that they've really managed to capture that style, not only in the visual style, which we had been talking about it a little bit earlier. It's based on and I'm of course already forgetting the gentleman's name.
Patrick Nagel.
Yeah, Patrick Nagel, which he used to do some portraits for Playboy, and then really blew up and started doing national advertising campaigns for Coke and IBM. So like that sort of blank style, the whitewash style and the minimalist drawings, like that's all very late 70s, early 80s. But what I think they also did really well is you get the sort of action movie cliches of that generation. Like when we have him saying like all these crazy, insane catchphrases, like that is such a classic hallmark of that era that it's nice that we can exist in this realm.
It's a mixture of a lot of 80s tropes that works well enough together because it's so outlandish. And the neon, my God, the neon, it's everywhere. The main plot of the first episode is the guy who sets the old woman on fire, El Diablo Malo, goes on a drug running mission across the malls of Moonbeam City. And while Dazzle is on a stakeout, he ends up meeting... a questionable pronunciation. It's spelled like I, but it's I shit.
Well, that was part of the in-joke, is even he couldn't pronounce the proper name.
And she wasn't allowed to, which in my country, young women cannot pronounce their own names. Love it.
Very sad, but very funny.
Yeah, and just everybody's designs are so striking because of the thick eye lines that Nagel used. One of my favorite things about the show is my grandmother had a Nagel portrait up at her house. So when I saw the initial promos for this a couple years ago, I was like, holy crap, why does this look so familiar? Oh, because I've seen this style for years growing up.
Not
Absolute
to get
insanity.
too off the rails here,
please.
but you had an interesting story about this where you saw this presentation a couple of years ago.
Yeah, at Comic-Con.
Comic-Con,
No,
right?
yeah. Comedy Central has been trying to get this working, or at least Scott has. I mean, I've known about this show for a couple years. It's just kind of been waiting, I think. I think it's just been waiting for the right time to be debuted, maybe for the right crowd. I think maybe once Archer got popular and there was maybe a little bit more room for a show like this to be around, maybe Comedy Central was like, okay, we'll go into production a little bit more. I don't know the full story. I just know that I've known about this show for quite some time.
We got to do some digging on that.
Yeah,
I'll figure out what's going on there.
Definitely do that. And oh God, I can't enough about this show.
So anyways, Dazzle goes on to recruit this superstar, yes, and promise her a whirlwind tour of all the malls of Moonbeam City, which, is there something any more quintessentially early 80s, late 70s than a mall tour?
And there were like 5 malls in Moonbeam City, and like amazing. That's what it sounded like.
12. There were dozens he was listing off, all seemingly more realistic sounding than the next one.
Yeah. And that's the thing about this show too, is a lot of the names and the titling, while ridiculous, seems pretty realistic. Like lower downtown, upper midtown, all of the areas, and this, they, as I said in my notes, they do the sex, and poor Chrysalis is on earphone while they're doing it the whole time. And one of the funniest bits of the first episode was finding out about the stakeout after the crime had taken place, and hearing the doing of the sex again, going straight to my notes, and Pizzazz just shouting, "Shut it off! Shut it off!" Just the timing. Anybody who hasn't watched the show, the first episode's free and in its entirety on Comedy Central, and another effect that we see from Pizzazz in the next scene that was when we first meet her, was the shutter lighting anytime she gets serious.
I love that motif, and I'm kind of amazed that they were able to keep it up through 2 consecutive episodes. Again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but we saw it whenever she gets serious. I think we're going to see those weird blinds come in. If she's on the beach, those blinds are still going to come whenever she gets serious.
No matter where, they could be in space. And I, you know what? I have a feeling they'll probably end up in space. It's the 80s.
Probably pretty soon, too.
At least that's something they do episode 4. You know, you gotta go lower in mid-season, and space is a good way to take a break. I can't stop saying too much good stuff. It's so quick. All of the comedy is so quick, and Dazzle as a character having that short-term memory as like a Peter Griffin or Homer Simpson, or not even an Archer, because Archer is very directly oriented of this is the thing we have to do, as opposed to Dazzle, who is he's got like ooh shiny syndrome.
Yeah. Like he's a guy who can actually take up different jobs within the show, which I think is interesting, because I was wondering, like, is that going to be a one-off thing when I saw it in the first episode? Because obviously he becomes Shastra's manager and is promoting her around town. But we saw it again in this second episode too, that he sort of abandons his post as a cop so that he can go off and play movie director for a little while.
I mean, he is the #1 cop in the precinct, so he gets some of that freedom, seemingly. And how bad is crime really when your #1 cop can go off to crack Moonistan and shoot a movie? But more about that in episode 2. The biggest thing that happens in the episode is that Rad gets jealous. Rad Cunningham, maybe Canadian. I like those little kind of those little in jokes in terms of just random Canadian terminology. But he ends up interrupting a dinner between Dazzle and Aisha, and handcuffs them and takes somebody whose name sounds like an eagle screech to take her place. And there's a huge riot that starts once Dazzle gets his way free and crashes a boat into the mall. Seaside malls. Why is that not more of a thing? With just all glass as the walls? Can we do that, please?
I think it's a proletariat working class struggle sort of thing. That is prime real estate. You want to go into the billionaires. You do not want to go into the plebeians. Now, in Moonbeam City, clearly an idyllic place to live. They can afford that sort of thing. That and the Moonbeam Tower.
Are we going to get super political and see like the outskirts of Moonbeam City is just dank, desolate, and brown? and it's going to get like and Daz is going to be like a revolutionary, like a Che Guevara sort of type? I would not be surprised.
You just wrote an episode, sir.
Hire me, pay me. WWE already pays me. Comedy Central should too. Give me a call. I'm on Twitter. That made sense. And El Diablo Malo gets impaled grossly in a very Metalocalypse style way, and the day is saved.
Yeah. That's an interesting comparison to Metalocalypse, because I'm wondering, like, over at Titmouse, they must have been like, oh, another stage scene death. Okay, we can do that. We have the animation all rigged up for that already.
They probably do.
Yeah.
There's plenty of Metalocalypse episodes where, like, the stages fall over and there's just random metal being thrown about. Yeah, they probably just touched it up. Either way, great use.
Yeah, and I think, again, drawing back to sort of the Archer comparisons, which I know it's never fair to go and compare a show to another show right out of the gate, where it's like, oh, this is just a rip-off of that show, or, you know, like, because, you know, people not necessarily have been saying that, but there have been those comparisons drawn. I think that it's really interesting when you get down to the nitty-gritty of what one does versus the other. I mean, I think in a situation where you might see Archer, he's sort of, like you said, really methodic, really direct, is able to go in and doesn't really accidentally solve crimes. Like, he's more of a guy that sort of has a plan in the back of his head all along. Whereas Dazzle is a guy who completely by accident every single time is the guy who just happens to solve the crime. Not even solve, but just beat someone down.
He just shows up at the end and goes, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, he takes credit for it.
My plan the whole time. Even God. I'm trying not to be super, like, overly overly complimentary of the show, but I just loved it so damn much. I've been a fan of this comedy style for years. Even at the very end, the Golden Dreamcatcher judges being the Department of Deportation, and that great joke of, well, if a U.S. citizen marries her, she can stay. Beautiful moment. Nope, she's gone. Later. Perfect.
Well, he was a writer on Conan for a very long time, the creator of the show, correct?
He was on Conan. He was on Funny or Die. He's been working his way up.
So you can definitely see that sort of influence here, where all of these seemingly over-the-top cutaways, all of the like real in-jokes, like sort of meta humor when it comes to cutting away to commercial, like the flower pot falling on his head in episode 1 with the like cartoonish circle zoom in, like that's classic Conan style comedy, right?
Oh no, I definitely agree. And the you can't stop crying with colorful candies. And well, I mean, it's not really graphic, but the sex scene between Daz and Aisha, just with the frosting and like the neon hearts, and this for a pilot, it definitely got the idea of what the show is across, and it established the characters in a way that here's a real, just packed in version of these characters, and now that we have a season, we're going to take our time and really flesh them out.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good job. But pilots are always tough because you have to introduce this entire world, and it's, in this case, an entire fictional world of Moonbeam City. It's not like Parks and Rec where it's like, hey, we're in Indiana, and that's how we do it. This is a completely made-up world with completely different rules from our reality, off-the-wall characters, and they managed to pack it all in, like you said. Like in our first episode, I was surprised. I thought that we were going to basically see the end of the episode once he picked her up in the mall, like once he became her manager. I was amazed that we were able to plow through so much more storyline.
Yeah, it seemed like a Simpsons setup where here's the plot at the beginning of the episode, and now that's done, let's get to the actual thing, whereas they made it carry throughout the entire thing.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic, and I hope that we get a little bit more of a overarching storyline as it goes on, but for right now we're getting one-offs, and those are still great, like our second episode, Lights Camera Reenaction, with John Hurley being the guest star, and I flippin' love him. He actually tweeted this was the funniest thing that he's worked on since Seinfeld.
No kidding.
And he's been busy, so I'm happy for him. I know him and Scott have worked together in the past. Really silly thing for College Humor, but great to see him as the host of what was the show, Crime Zappers, sort of a reenactment show.
Electric Z, like the Zenith, Zenith
TV logo.
Right?
Yeah.
A little bit like that.
I would watch this show. The Crime Zappers version. I know that we've had like America's Most Wanted and other reenactment shows of this nature, but the whole 80s of it. And if you just don't even get an actor, just get John Hurley to host it. Why not? He's got too good of an announcer's voice to do it. Let's just have that. But the episode starts with a children's rave to encourage kids to rave safely before they have a chance to do it unsafely. And they even go as far as to have kids' ecstasy machines as opposed to the adult ecstasy. It's a very wonderful gesture. And the colors, again, the neon. Beautiful.
I gotta be honest, I was a little freaked out when the episode opened up because they were doing like blacklight on top of the already crazy neon pastels that they have going on, and it blew my mind a little bit. Like my color sensory glands, which is definitely a thing.
That's science?
Yeah,
I actually wrote it here.
For sure, science. Color sensory glands.
Science.
Just overloaded. But it was really cool. I loved all the throwaway jokes, like the back of Dazzle's hat is DAZL. Like that is such a legit. I was like, yeah, that would be a DJ logo. Like I could see that on Hollywood and Vine.
I wonder if that is a person who's gonna have to contact like some lower end dude who's gonna contact him and it's like, that's my gimmick. Give me back my gimmick. He ends up inadvertently stopping a bike theft after a freak out, and the thing about Daz that we've been learning at least for these 2 episodes is we know nothing about Daz. He is a not necessarily an empty shell, but he is an open canvas where a lot of different neon strokes get painted from episode to episode. We don't know where he came from, what his parentage is like. We just know that he's very confident, and he's a cop
To a fault.
to a fault. He's a cop to a fault. I mean, he barely does his job. He's hitting kids with. What did you think about the kid? About the kid who stole the bike?
I thought it was amazing how self-aware he was. I actually wrote that down with the, what did he say? Like, nah, you can't catch me because I'm a minor. I'm a product of my environment. Like, again, very self-aware child. And I loved all the, like, DVD sort of moments in this, or DVR moments, as we were
DVR
trying
moments.
to, like, rewind and pause and frame. I think that Dazzle arrested him with, quote, small cuffs. Like, it was, yeah,
it said
like
small.
it said small on the cuff size.
Kid-sized cuffs, only in Moonbeam City.
Yeah, and we got another one where it was the buck fuddies. Like, need a buck fuddy? Call 24
I'm surprised
hours.
that they got that on the air, because that's really cutting it close.
Yeah.
Thought South Park gets away with a lot, so I guess other shows can too.
Yeah, that was the funny thing, is that South Park set a really high bar when it comes to violence, profanity, drug use. So it's like Moonbeam City is, in a way, catching up to that. I guess that's just my personal take on it, that it's a little bit like they have so far to go. They have to go so far now to push the envelope, which is why we see a little old lady getting lit on fire.
A kid exploding and just trying to get him off the set.
Yeah.
Daz has one thing on his mind, and that's Dazzle. and that seems to be the recurring theme, like at the beginning, where the hell have you been? I was checking on some leads, and he was at a strip club, and he brought the strippers with him. Get these sluts out of here. They have names, probably. And those little whispery, quick, so good. And with this, there was an ongoing in joke about the child raves just happening in the background, like halfway through when he's trying to get the budget approved by Pizzazz to shoot his own version of the reenactment. He's like, well, child crime rates have been on the rise ever since we started doing those mandatory child raves. It's God, what would life be like if we had mandatory childhood raves?
I would have been a lot happier as a child, I'm sure.
Would have been ecstatic and addicted to drugs.
You're right, though. We did have a lot more callbacks to that. I mean, it literally came full circle where everyone is at a rave at the end of the episode. But we saw those little touches, thoughtful touches, throughout the episode. The kids' ecstasy dispenser in the
liquor store.
Which, by the way, why is a kids' ecstasy dispenser in a liquor store where I'm pretty sure even in Moonbeam City you need to be at least 21 to buy alcohol?
It gets the kids, and there's also the candy there. That's the thing. You gotta improve profits. It's a business, man. Come on.
And the sunglasses.
But I mean, either
you gotta sell those sunglasses.
You gotta put them next to the ecstasy so that when they're trying them on, it's like it turns into their eyes. Like, you know, that's, as I don't know what ecstasy is like. Don't ask me on Twitter. I think the star of this episode was definitely Vex. I mean, Daz is definitely the star, but just his placing of all of the scenes in the reenactments, even the first reenactment that we saw when he just steps out of the screen,
which is why I'm here.
Oh my God, it's Vex. And Rad's storyline in this whole thing was he's such a big fan of Crime Zappers that he just wanted to be on the show for some reason, and he hatches this plot and he's just the constant one-upman for Dazzle. He's the underdog. He's the number 2 cop. So in that respect, you can kind of understand where he's coming from. I think he'll have some moments of redemption where they'll have to work together, and it'll be nice. But for right now, he's just kind of that jerk who dips rats in coffee mugs.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with the first few episodes, so I think we're going to see a definite pattern be established, at least for the first few, where it seems to be that Dazzle has something going on that it has nothing to do with being a cop. Rad gets extremely jealous, manages to oust him or try to one-up him in the thing. Again, not being a cop, just whatever else captures his attention. And then we circle back to saving the day.
And this is the closest thing so far that Rad has done to being a good cop. I mean, though arguably he was at the crime scene in the first episode, so at least he's trying to maybe one-up Dazzle in that, but he always is. So with this, he tried to be a cop by interrupting that robbery, but in the end, it was all just to rub it all over Dazzle's face.
Well, speaking of rubbing on his face, how about that monologue where he's confessing that he never actually stopped the crime?
Do it. I got scared and I ran into the sunglasses thing and it fell on me and then I ran outside. How do you have cameras for this? Sewer cam.
I fell in the poop and I had
And then I pooped in the poop and I couldn't tell what poop was my poop and then a little bit of the poop got in my mouth and I liked it.
That's one of those jokes where it started off, I'm like, we're doing a poop joke, really? But then the sheer persistence of it, refusing to stop and pushing it even further and further to the point where everyone's jaw was dropped at the end. It's like, okay, I'm on board. You can do this poop joke if you want.
Poop joke permitted. So that is the one per season. But you have to get a little bit more persistent than that if you want to get another poop joke to hit home. I mean, yeah, I was with you on that where it was like, okay, all right, cool, fun, all right, this is funny, all right,
yeah.
And then just laughter, pure laughter. But because of this lie, the Crime Zappers gets canceled, and to celebrate the canceling of the rave or the canceling of the show, they have a rave. I think this is the instead of like a policeman's ball, I hope that we go back to the rave as a device where it's like, oh, we saved the day, time for another rave, or like oh good, we saved the mayor, let's have a mayor celebrating rave. But
it's the late 70s, early 80s. I have the feeling there are going to be a lot of raves in Moonbeam City.
Very astute. So with we didn't even get to Dazzle's plot, but Dazzle, he gets a little bit indignant about how lazy the reenactments are. It's kind of a one take and that's it. But he has this crazy delusion. He wouldn't think so, but he has this crazy delusion that he needs to make it his ultimate vision. He ends up getting $30 million worth of funding to shoot the movie and crack Moonistan. From
Zephyr Agamemnon. Which, again, these names.
It's not even... It could have been Agamemnon, but it's not. There's no... I don't think there's any... I don't think there's a like nationality in Moonbeam City. Everybody's just from Moonbeam City. Who knows? Because everybody's just that stark white outline.
Yeah.
Interesting. But the shot in the desert, Daz gets a little bit upset and he starts he grows a beard just because he keeps doing rewrites. There's a giant bike wheel at one point and he starts gaining weight. And he doesn't start drinking, but he starts throwing open beer cans just because he likes throwing them.
Plapst beer.
Yes, Plapst.
By the way.
Plapst teal winner. Why not?
Plapst and cheese, which I think is a really weird combination.
Well, I mean, he doesn't even drink. That joke is just, I don't even drink them. I just like to throw them. Bah! Just those quick, like 2 seconds. It's not even a cutaway. If it was a cutaway, it would be a little bit silly, but it's just... Here, let me get you to the end of the joke so that we can laugh and then continue. But it's still a part of this show, and that ultimately I think is what we can take away from Moonbeam City is that the jokes involved in the plot, they stick around for a little bit, make sure that they stew and get the right amount of airtime. Even the shutters on Pizzazz in the first one, there was only 3. That's all you need. Move on from there. So. I think that this show will have some legs, especially with how ridiculous it can get. It started with drugs and just cocaine running. How far can it go, really? How far can't it go?
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest question that I have is still sort of the reality where we're living. It's like, okay, we're pushing it really far to the point where, okay, cops don't need to be cops. They can also become music producers or music managers and film directors. But like, we can have sky dancing, which is semi-plausible, but then also, I'm forgetting the name now of his character. Vex Mulroy.
Yes, Vex Mulroy.
Oh, such a good name. Vex Mulroy can also simultaneously fly
to
away.
The sky!
Yeah, never to be seen again. So it is going to be interesting to see, how far they can push it. Because they've obviously demonstrated they're willing to go meta with all the... Right after the break, just dead into the camera. After the break, cut to commercial. So, you're right. I'm now pontificating a little too much.
No, I totally agree. I with a show this insane, like it doesn't have I don't think it has the frame that Archer has. Archer has to stay within some sort of plausibility and reality. They do get crazy, like with going to space and C-Lab and all that stuff. But with this, you can really just put all steam ahead, everything on 11, and just shoot for the stars. And that's where I think it'll really set itself apart. Though if you are a fan of Archer, I think that's good enough to get you interested in this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, I wanted to... First of all, we're already talking to people to get them in as guests on the show. The Nightclub Band, which does all of the music for the show.
Bravo, by the way.
Oh, so good.
Band.
I want a soundtrack now, even before it's gone, or even before it's done. Just release it so that I can just drive with that on full repeat. We are already talking to the Nightclub Band to get them in studio.
Can we give them a shout out on Twitter here? Let's give everyone their Twitter handle so they can go ahead and follow
Twitter
along.
Is @Nightclub Band.
There you go.
Simple and straightforward. Not confusing like Soapbox Mark, but super easy to follow. And if you want to follow some of the creators, if you want to let them know that we're here, that we're doing the show, follow Moonbeam City CC. That is the show's official Twitter account. Scott Gairdner. That's Gairdner. And Scott. And of course, Rob Lowe and Elizabeth Banks, the rest of the actors on the show. And we'll try to get them in the studio. I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to get some of the creative folks in here, but your help will keep us here. And also make sure we're going to be on iTunes now, so make sure to rate us on iTunes. I think we're in for a fun season and hopefully a fun run of the show.
Yeah, as long as you guys are still commenting and asking us questions and keeping involved, we're going to do our dangdest to give you shout outs and answer your questions and talk about what you want to talk about on the air as well.
And despite being our first show, we do have people watching live, which is great. Thank you. And just so you know, we do record this show live on AfterBuzz TV's YouTube account. If you're listening on iTunes, if you're listening on iTunes, we do it live on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, we have an iTunes channel as well. So just look up Moonbeam City on iTunes. You'll find us. But I think that will do it for this episode of the Moonbeam City After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. So, Mr. Goodness, put yourself over. Where can the folks find you?
They can find me on the Twits at Greg Goodness. You can also catch me at my sketch shows. I perform at I.O. West every second Sunday of the month with my sketch group, It's the Cops. And if you're in New York City, well, that's insane. But guess what? I'm going to be in New York City as well. Coming next month, I'm going to be at the Pit with It's the Cops. Check it out. It's all listed on their calendar page. It's going to be a good time.
All people in New York are insane. You heard it here first. I think the insane part is that you're going to be there together as a group.
It'll be fun.
Make sure to head out there. I know we got some great fans in New York. Met them over SummerSlam weekend. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Soapbox Mark. Also do a wrestling podcast at The Gimmick Pod. And we're here doing what do you have other shows that you do here this season?
Well,
or is this the first one?
No, this is the first one. But once Archer starts back up, you can catch me on that.
And you can find me on all the wrestling shows here. NXT. I show up on Raw sometimes. I show up on SmackDown sometimes. And any other show that might... Oh, Jedi Alliance on the Popcorn Talk Network. There's too much stuff. You can follow all of us here at AfterBuzz TV. And make sure to rate us on iTunes and on YouTube. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.